Hello, I'm Henry Keane. We are UATV, and you are welcome to the News Pulse as usual. Today in the episode, fire erupts at one of Russia's largest oil refineries. Nukes, submarines, and rage Trump unleashes on Medvedev and Putin. Russian army bleeds out in the east. Ukraine liberates town after town. Today, Ukraine marks the Day of Defenders. It's more than just a day on the calendar. It is a symbol of resilience, unity, and the unbreakable spirit of the Ukrainian people. We honor soldiers on the front lines, men and women, medics who tirelessly save lives, volunteers who give their strength and humbleness, and power grid workers who restore light, literally, and water and heat under fire. This day is a reminder Ukraine's strength lies not so much in its weapons, but in its people, those who believe in the country and fight for its freedom. Glory to Ukraine and glory to heroes. On Wednesday morning in Russia, something went wrong at the Novoyaroslav oil refinery. A fire broke out there. The regional governor rushed to reassure the public that no drone attacks were recorded recently. The fire is of technogenic nature solely, he claimed. Well, this refinery is no small facility indeed. It ranks amongst the top 5 in Russia, producing gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and other strategic products. Operating since 1961, it processes about 15 million tons of oil annually. For the record, Rosneft and Gazprom controls the plants, and even if this time there was no Ukrainian drones actually involved, the result is the same. Russia's war machine took yet another hit to its vital fuel lines. In September, 4 Russian oil refineries were forced to hold operations following a series of drone strikes, according to Russian media reports. The attacks have disabled roughly a quarter of Russia's oil refining capacity. As of September 28th, about 38% of the country's primary oil processing units were offline completely. Overall, available capacity for producing gasoline and diesel fuel dropped by 6% in August alone and plunged by 18% in September. Amongst the refineries affected is the Kherson oil refinery in the Leningrad region, Russia's second largest by capacity, which was shut down completely on September 14th. The Ryazan oil refinery, owned by Rosneft and ranked amongst the top 5 in the country, ceased operations completely on September 5th. The Novokuybishevsk refinery stopped production on September 12th, followed by Gazprom Astrakhan refinery on September 22. The disruption has already caused significant domestic shortages. Fuel supply in the Russian market has reportedly fallen by as much as 20% of total consumption, leading to growing pressure at gas stations and concerns over the stability of the country's energy sector. President Donald Trump, meeting with generals at Quantico, delivered a torrent of emotional remarks on politics, war, nuclear threats, including Dmitry Medvedev of Russia.
We were a little bit threatened by Russia recently, and I sent a submarine, nuclear submarine, the most lethal weapon ever made. But I announced that based on his Medvedev mention of nuclear, and it was really a stupid person that works for him, mentioned the word nuclear. I moved a submarine or 2 over to the coast of Russia, just to be careful because we can't let people throw around that word. Donald Trump, President of the United States.
Sure, we cannot. We need to act. As one thing is clear, we are talking about not only Medvedev in particular, but Russia in general, and you just cannot talk sense to a brutal terrorist. As simple as that is what terrorism is all about, being senselessly brutal. And if it is more or less clear with Medvedev, well, what about the other internationally indicted Russians and the war they are mongering? War is very strange, and you never know what's going to happen with it. Trump said the easiest one to deal with, Trump also said, would be Putin. But it has turned out to be the hardest of them all. Well, Ukraine has been telling that. It has been telling that to the world since 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea. So the question today is, what do we all, as a collective West, do about it? Is there a plan, Mr. President?
We met in Alaska. We had a good meeting. Then he went back and started sending drones into Kyiv. I said, I thought we had a good meeting. But it's one of those things. We got to get it done. It's crazy what's going on. That's the worst war there's been since World War II. The number of soldiers that are being killed. It is just crazy. From 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers die a week. Think of that. So I think we'll get that done. But that's turned out to be the toughest one. I'm so disappointed in President Putin, Donald Trump, President of the United States.
And then we just have the one to settle, and we have to settle it up with President Putin and Zelensky. Got to get them together and get it done. But the only way we can do that is through strength. I mean, if we were weak, they wouldn't even take my phone call, but we have extreme strength. We had the horror show in Afghanistan, which is really the reason I think that Putin went in.
Voluntarily or not so much, but Donald Trump indeed made a lot in terms of reaching peace with Russia, believe it or not. He literally gave Putin all the chances in the world to end this war. Trump invited Putin to Alaska. The United States shook his hand and said, let's stop the war in the name of peace in the world. No, Putin said, I don't want a peace in the world, I want a peace of it. Nevertheless, Trump's effort is great indeed. It is worth a prize, maybe, even Nobel's, but Trump said, speaking to generals, that he does not want it. So whatever is happening, we in Ukraine just want to be sure that someone who is in charge of the whole world actually knows what he's doing, as the Ukrainian forces has been working hard every day of these 4 years of this war to make Putin look the way he looks today.
I thought he would get this thing over with. He should have had that war done in a week. And I said to him, you don't look good. You're 4 years fighting a war that should have taken a week. Are you a paper tiger?
One more thing to add to the topic. Medvedev said that there are no American submarines near the shores of Russia, calling it a black cat in a dark room while the cat is not even there. So I guess in terms of how Donald Trump is saying himself or making his administration to say, it may be a words of just, but surely should not be just words. Vladimir Putin, just like Joseph Stalin, before him understands only the language of force, so may the force be with you, Mr. Trump. Ukraine's counteroffensive is gaining momentum indeed. President Zelensky has announced that Ukrainian forces have already reclaimed nearly 180 square kilometers of territory. The cost for the enemy has been steep. On the Dobropili axis alone, Russia has lost close to 3,200 troops since the operation began. Russian forces continue to try to break through Ukraine's defenses along the entire front line. My colleagues have the latest on how the situation is unfolding at the front line.
Only 1 out of 10 Russian soldiers can approach the positions of Ukraine's defense forces on the Novopavlivsky direction. This is according to a report by the Institute for the Study of War. The reason is the work of Ukrainian drones, which paralyze the movement of Russian troops along logistical routes. Russian soldiers are forced to abandon equipment and proceed on foot for up to 20 kilometers from the front line to avoid drone strikes. The effective defensive actions of the Ukrainian Armed Forces prevent Putin from achieving any of his previously set objectives, analysts note.
Of course, he is now trying to improve the situation, bringing in reserves, but he is failing to conduct any successful operations on any sector. The most challenging, of course, is the Pokrovsk direction. There, he has repeatedly set the task of completing this operation by capturing Kostiantinivka, Kramatorsk, and Slovyansk. Not a single scenario succeeds. On the Dobropila direction, where they once broke through, we have already localized the situation, not only pushing the enemy back 8 kilometers, but in some areas up to 15 kilometers, and liberated up to 10 settlements.
In the south, on the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Ukrainian armed forces are holding back Russian assaults near Orikhiv and Huliaipole. The invaders have no significant successes there, nor in Kherson region. The Russian army is making every effort to break through to the right bank of the Dnipro, but to no avail.
Yes, indeed, there are attempts at assault operations today, including the use of watercraft, specifically boats. This is far from the only example of such watercraft being destroyed. The Russians are trying to cross, first of all, to the islands. They have a desire to reach the right bank as well, but such plans do not end in successful implementation. The island campaign continues.
Special attention is focused on the north and east. That's where the main forces of the Russian army are concentrated, and that's where the occupiers suffer the heaviest losses. forces. The hottest situation remains in Donetsk region. On the Pokrovsk direction, a 120,000-strong Russian grouping is concentrated, yet Ukrainian defenders continue to advance. Novoekonomichny and Udachne have been liberated. This prevents the enemy from gaining control over the Pokrovsk-Pavlohrad highway. The situation near Rodinske has been stabilized. It is there that the Russian command is deploying significant forces and reserves. On the Dobropilla direction, the Ukrainian Armed Forces have liberated at least 7 settlements and about 180 square kilometers of territory from Russian occupiers. Moreover, some Russian forces attempting to break through in the Dobropilla area have been encircled.
The Dobropilla counteroffensive operation continues. I want to thank all our involved units for their effectiveness. Since the beginning of the operation, our forces have managed to liberate more than 174 square kilometers, and more than 194 kilometers have been cleared of Russian saboteurs. Russian losses in this operation alone amount to nearly 3,200, with the majority being irrecoverable losses.
Russian troops are facing serious supply issues, particularly with fuel and lubricants. The reason is the successful actions of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, not only on the front line, but also on the territory of the aggressor country, specifically strikes by Ukraine's defense forces on Russian oil refineries.
The total losses of the occupiers on the Dobropilla direction amount to 3,185 personnel, of which 1,769 are irrecoverable. The invaders also lost 969 units of weapons and military equipment. Based on reports from commanders on the ground, I have identified tasks and issued necessary instructions to increase the effectiveness of enemy fire engagement, particularly at long ranges, neutralize enemy sabotage groups in designated areas, and improve the quality of unit coordination. Oleksandr Syrskyi, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on Telegram.
While the Ukrainian armed forces methodically exhaust the Russian army, the Kremlin is left to invent mythical victories. The president of Ukraine noted that Putin lies even to those world leaders who still engage in talks with him, assuring them of his army's alleged achievements. But the reality is quite different. The aggressor country's army suffers heavy losses and achieves no success. Reported by Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.
Well, that was it for today. Thank you so very much. My name is Emre Keen, and also thank you for standing with Ukraine. Please don't forget to subscribe so to stay tuned to what is actually happening in the world, shown to you by us, UATV, from Ukrainian perspective. Goodbye.